There is a quiet moment that visits many people at night. The world becomes softer, the noise fades. The responsibilities of the day loosen their grip, and in that silence, a question often emerges from somewhere deep within us. Have I truly come home to myself? It is a strange question because most of us know where we live. We know our address. We know the streets we walk. We know the rooms where we sleep. Yet many people spend years living in houses while feeling homeless within their own souls. They move through life carrying achievements, relationships, obligations, and identities, but somewhere beneath all of it, there remains a subtle feeling of distance, a feeling that they have wandered away from something essential, not from another person, not from a destination, from themselves. Perhaps this is one of the great hidden struggles of human life. We learn how to please others before we learn how to understand ourselves. We learn how to perform before we learn how to listen. We learn how to fit into the world before we discover who is doing the fitting. And so, a division begins. The person we show the world slowly becomes different from the person who quietly waits inside. At first, the separation seems harmless. A small compromise here, a hidden emotion there, a dream postponed, a truth left unspoken. But years pass, and what began as a tiny distance becomes an entire landscape. One day, we wake up feeling exhausted without understanding why. We feel restless despite having everything we once desired. We feel lonely even in the presence of people who love us, because the deepest loneliness is not the absence of company. It is the absence of connection with ourselves. Imagine a tree that spends its entire life stretching its branches outward while neglecting its roots. For a while, it may appear magnificent. Its leaves may attract admiration. Its shape may impress those who pass by. But eventually a storm arrives, and when it does, the strength of the tree is revealed not by what is visible above the ground, but by what has been nurtured beneath it. Human beings are no different. The storms of life reveal the condition of our inner roots: loss, disappointment, failure, change, aging, heartbreak. These experiences do not merely happen to us. They introduce us to ourselves. Many people spend years trying to avoid these encounters. They distract themselves. They stay busy. They chase one goal after another. They convince themselves that happiness exists just beyond the next achievement. But the psyche has a mysterious wisdom. What we avoid does not disappear. What we refuse to face does not vanish. It waits quietly, patiently, like a letter sitting unopened on a table, and sooner or later, life asks us to read it. This is why letting go is so difficult. We often believe we are releasing a person, a memory, a dream, or a chapter of life. But beneath the surface, something deeper is happening. We are releasing versions of ourselves, the self who needed approval, the self who feared rejection, the self who believed love had to be earned, the self who thought worth depended upon achievement, the self who confused attachment with belonging. And every time one of these identities dissolves, it feels like a small death. The ego resists, it clings, it bargains, it searches for reasons to hold on, because what is familiar often feels safer than what is true. Yet transformation requires a kind of surrender, a willingness to step into uncertainty, a willingness to become someone we have never been before. Consider the caterpillar. If it could speak during its transformation, it might believe its world was ending. Everything familiar disappears, the old form dissolves, certainty vanishes, control evaporates, and yet what appears to be destruction is actually becoming. Perhaps many of the endings we fear are not endings at all. Perhaps they are invitations. Invitations into a larger version of ourselves. Invitations into greater wholeness. Invitations into a life that no longer requires constant performance. Because real self-love is not self-admiration. It is not the endless pursuit of perfection. It is not convincing ourselves that we are flawless. Real self Love begins when we stop demanding perfection from our humanity. It begins when we become willing to sit beside our own wounds without judgment, to acknowledge our fears without shame, to witness our mistakes without condemnation, to recognize that every person carries contradictions, strength and vulnerability, wisdom and confusion, courage and hesitation, light and shadow. The tragedy is not that we possess these opposites. The tragedy is believing we must eliminate half of ourselves in order to be worthy. Wholeness emerges when we stop waging war against our own nature. There is a story hidden inside nearly every life, a story about someone searching everywhere for what was already within them, searching for validation, searching for certainty, searching for belonging, searching for peace, only to discover that the treasure was never missing, only forgotten, like a traveler wandering the world while carrying a map in their pocket. The journey was necessary, not because the destination was far away, but because wisdom required experience. We cannot think our way into wholeness. We must live our way into it. We must lose certain things. We must outgrow certain identities. We must survive certain disappointments. We must sit through nights that feel endless, and through those experiences, something remarkable begins to happen. The false layers gradually fall away. The masks become heavier than honesty. The old stories stop making sense. And beneath everything we once believed ourselves to be, we encounter something quieter, something older, something astonishingly simple, our authentic self, not the self constructed from expectations, not the self built from fear, not the self designed for approval, but the self that existed before the world told us who we should become. This meeting often feels less like discovering something new and more like remembering something ancient, a forgotten song, a familiar voice, a long lost home, and perhaps that is the deepest meaning of healing. Not becoming someone else, becoming more fully yourself. Night after night, year after year, life gently invites us toward this reunion, sometimes through joy, sometimes through suffering, sometimes through love, sometimes through loss. Yet the invitation remains the same. Return, return to what is real, return to what is alive, return to what is true. Return to yourself, because in the end, the greatest relationship you will ever experience is not with another person. It is with the person who has accompanied you through every triumph, every heartbreak, every mistake, every dream, and every transformation. You, and perhaps the final revelation is this: the peace you have been seeking was never hiding in the future. The love you have been chasing was never locked inside another person's hands. The home you have been searching for was never somewhere else. It has been quietly waiting within you all along. And the moment you stop running from yourself, stop fighting yourself, stop abandoning yourself, you discover something extraordinary. You were never truly lost. You were simply finding your way back home. There is a form of homelessness that cannot be seen from the outside. It leaves no visible signs, no empty streets, no war, no suitcases. A person can possess a beautiful home, a successful career, meaningful relationships, and still experience a quiet sense of displacement within themselves. This hidden homelessness is one of the most common and least discussed experiences of modern life. It is the feeling of being disconnected from one's own inner world, as though the person living your life is somehow a stranger to the soul that inhabits it. Most people do not drift away from themselves all at once. The process is subtle. It begins in childhood, when we first learn that certain parts of us are welcomed while others are not. We discover that some emotions receive praise and others receive correction. Some qualities attract approval while others invite rejection. Without realizing it, we begin editing ourselves. We become skilled architects of a social identity, carefully constructing a version of ourselves that can survive within the expectations of family, school, culture, and society. At first, these adaptations seem necessary. In many ways, they are. Human beings are social creatures. We learn by observing others and adjusting to our environment. Yet there is a hidden cost when adaptation becomes the central goal of life. The more energy we devote to becoming what others expect, the less attention we give to understanding who we actually are. Years pass and the distance grows. We become experts at fulfilling roles. We know how to be productive employees, dependable friends, supportive partners, responsible parents. We know how to smile when required, how to remain composed under pressure, how to meet deadlines and maintain appearances. Yet beneath these performances, another question quietly waits. Who am I when none of these roles are being played? For many people, this question remains unanswered for decades. The strange thing about inner disconnection is that it often disguises itself as ordinary dissatisfaction. A person may believe they need a different job, a different city, a different relationship, or a different achievement. They chase one destination after another, hoping that fulfillment lies just beyond the next milestone. Yet each accomplishment provides only temporary relief. The emptiness eventually returns, not because anything is wrong with the achievement itself, but because external success cannot repair internal separation. The psyche continuously sends signals when this disconnection becomes too great. Sometimes it appears as chronic restlessness, sometimes as anxiety that seems to have no obvious source, sometimes as a feeling that life is happening mechanically, as though each day is merely a repetition of obligations. These experiences are often interpreted as problems to eliminate, but they may actually be messages. They are reminders that something essential has been neglected. Deep within every person exists an authentic center that longs to be acknowledged. It is not concerned with status, comparison, or approval. It seeks honesty rather than perfection. It seeks alignment rather than performance. When we ignore this center for too long, life begins to feel strangely empty, regardless of how full our schedules become. The tragedy is not that people lose themselves. The tragedy is that many become so accustomed to the feeling that they no longer recognize it. They mistake disconnection for normality. They assume that exhaustion, numbness, and quiet dissatisfaction are simply unavoidable parts of being an adult. Yet somewhere beneath the noise of daily life, the authentic self remains present. It waits patiently beneath the layers of expectation and habit. It waits beneath the masks we wear and the stories we tell ourselves. It waits with remarkable patience, offering small reminders through intuition, longing, curiosity, and moments of unexpected clarity. Even after years of neglect, it never truly disappears. It simply waits for the moment when we become willing to listen. Human beings often measure their strength by what can be seen. We admire confidence, achievement, resilience, and success. We look at the visible parts of a person's life and assume that these external qualities reveal the full story of who they are. Yet life has a way of exposing a deeper truth. Just as a powerful storm reveals whether a tree has developed strong roots beneath the ground, difficult experiences reveal the condition of our inner world. When everything is going well, it is easy to believe we understand ourselves. We feel capable when plans unfold as expected. We feel secure when relationships are stable. We feel certain when our future appears predictable. In these moments, the deeper foundations of our identity often remain hidden because they are not being tested. Calm weather rarely reveals the strength of a structure. It is only when strong winds arrive that weaknesses become visible. Life inevitably brings these storms. No one escapes them. They may arrive in the form of heartbreak, disappointment, failure, uncertainty, loss, rejection, or unexpected change. Sometimes they appear suddenly, transforming a familiar life into unfamiliar territory within a matter of days. Other times they develop gradually, like gathering clouds on a distant horizon. Regardless of how they arrive, their effect is often the same. They strip away illusions and force us to confront aspects of ourselves that were previously hidden. This is why difficult experiences can feel so unsettling. They do not merely challenge our circumstances, they challenge our identity. A person who has always defined themselves through achievement may struggle deeply when they encounter failure. Someone who has built their sense of worth around being needed by others may feel lost when relationships change. The storm does not create these vulnerabilities, it reveals them. Many people spend enormous amounts of energy trying to avoid discomfort. They seek certainty, control, and stability, believing these things will protect them from suffering. While this desire is understandable, it often creates a fragile kind of strength. A life built entirely around avoiding challenges may appear secure, but it lacks the depth that comes from genuine self-understanding. True resilience is not developed through comfort alone. It is developed through conscious encounters with difficulty. Consider how nature works. Trees do not strengthen their roots during perfect weather. Their roots grow deeper because they must withstand changing conditions. The pressure itself becomes part of their development. Human beings are remarkably similar. The challenges we face often force us to develop qualities that would otherwise remain dormant. Patience emerges through waiting. Courage emerges through fear. Wisdom emerges through mistakes. Compassion often emerges through personal suffering. The paradox is that many of the experiences we would never voluntarily choose become the very experiences that shape us most profoundly. A painful ending may teach us self-respect. A period of uncertainty may reveal hidden strengths. A disappointment may redirect us toward a more authentic path. Looking back years later, people often discover that their greatest growth began during moments they initially viewed as setbacks. This does not mean suffering should be romanticized or desired. Pain is painful for a reason. Loss is real. Grief is real. Fear is real. Yet within these experiences lies an opportunity that is easy to overlook. They invite us to build our lives upon something deeper than circumstances. They encourage us to discover values, beliefs, and inner resources that remain stable, even when external conditions change. When the storms of life arrive, they ask a silent question: what within you remains standing when everything else is uncertain? The answer is rarely found in achievements, possessions, or appearances. It is found in the roots beneath the surface, the parts of yourself that have been quietly growing all along, preparing you for challenges you never knew were coming. One of the most difficult truths a person will ever encounter is that growth often requires saying goodbye to versions of themselves they have known for years. We tend to imagine transformation as an act of gaining something new. New wisdom, new confidence, new opportunities, new perspectives. Yet genuine transformation is just as much about release as it is about acquisition. Before we can become who we are meant to be, we are often asked to let go of who we thought we needed to be. This process rarely feels comfortable. The mind naturally seeks familiarity. Even when old habits create suffering, they can still feel safer than uncertainty. People often remain attached to outdated identities, not because those identities bring happiness, but because they provide a sense of predictability. We learn who we are through repetition, and over time, those repeated patterns become part of our self-image. A person may spend years identifying as the one who always pleases others. Another may see themselves as the achiever who must constantly prove their worth. Someone else may define themselves through being needed, admired, successful, or strong. These identities can become so deeply woven into everyday life that questioning them feels almost impossible. They no longer seem like roles we perform. They feel like reality itself. Yet life has a remarkable way of challenging the identities we cling to most tightly. The people we tried to please may still reject us. The achievements we thought would complete us may leave us feeling strangely empty. The relationships we built our identity around may change or disappear. The future we carefully imagined may unfold in an entirely different direction. In these moments, we experience not only disappointment but confusion. If this role no longer defines me, then who am I? This question often marks the beginning of a profound inner transformation. The difficulty lies in the fact that letting go can feel like losing a part of ourselves. There is a subtle grief involved in releasing old identities, even when those identities have become limiting. We mourn the person we thought we would become. We mourn the stories we told ourselves about success, love, belonging, and meaning. We mourn familiar patterns because they once helped us navigate the world. Yet what feels like loss is often the creation of space. Imagine carrying a suitcase filled with items you no longer need. For years you drag it everywhere, believing it contains something essential. It becomes so familiar that you hardly notice its weight. Then one day, you finally open it and realize most of its contents belong to a previous chapter of your life. Old fears, old expectations, old definitions of worth. The suitcase has become heavy not because of what it contains, but because of how long you have carried it. Many people spend years trying to add more to their lives when what they truly need is to release what no longer belongs. Personal growth is not always about becoming more. Sometimes it is about becoming less burdened, less controlled by fear, less dependent on approval, less attached to outdated beliefs about who you must be. The challenge is that the space between identities can feel deeply uncomfortable. When the old self begins to dissolve and the new self has not yet fully emerged, there is often a period of uncertainty. During this stage, people may feel lost, confused, or directionless. They may wonder whether they are moving forward at all. Yet this in-between space is often where the most important transformation occurs. A caterpillar does not become a butterfly by improving its existing form. It undergoes a complete reorganization. What once defined its existence eventually becomes insufficient for the next stage of its journey. In much the same way, human beings are periodically asked to outgrow versions of themselves that once felt permanent. The courage required for this process is not the courage to conquer the world. It is the courage to release what is familiar. It is the willingness to trust that your identity is larger than any single role, achievement, relationship, or expectation. It is the faith that beneath every ending, another possibility quietly waits to emerge. Becoming who you are is not a matter of adding endless layers to your identity. It is a gradual uncovering, a slow removal of masks, assumptions, and inherited expectations. And with every layer that falls away, you move closer to something that has been present from the beginning, the self that does not need to be invented, only revealed. One of the greatest struggles in human life is the desire to be entirely good, entirely strong, entirely certain. From an early age, many people learn to divide themselves into acceptable and unacceptable parts. Certain emotions are welcomed while others are hidden. Certain qualities are celebrated while others are pushed into the shadows. We learn to present the parts of ourselves that seem worthy of love and conceal the parts that feel flawed, vulnerable, or imperfect. At first, this may appear to be a practical strategy. After all, society often rewards confidence more than insecurity, certainty more than doubt, and success more than failure. Over time, however, this habit of self-division creates an inner conflict. The more we reject aspects of ourselves, the more energy we spend trying to maintain the illusion that they do not exist. Yet every human being contains opposites. There is kindness and anger. There is courage and fear. There is wisdom and confusion. There is generosity and selfishness. There is confidence and insecurity. These contradictions are not evidence of failure. They are evidence of being human. The problem begins when we believe that worthiness depends upon eliminating everything that appears imperfect. We become locked in a constant battle against ourselves. We criticize our weaknesses, suppress uncomfortable emotions, and judge ourselves for thoughts and feelings that naturally arise. Instead of understanding our inner world, we attempt to control it through force. But whatever is pushed into darkness rarely disappears. Unacknowledged fears often shape our decisions without our awareness. Hidden insecurities influence our relationships. Suppressed anger can emerge in unexpected ways. Ignored sadness can transform into numbness. The parts of ourselves we refuse to face do not vanish simply because we avoid them. They continue to exist beneath the surface, quietly influencing our lives. Imagine standing in a room with a large shadow behind you. The more you run from it, the more it follows. The faster you move, the faster it moves. No amount of escape changes its presence. The only way to understand the shadow is to turn and look at it directly. This is where real courage begins. Many people assume courage means fearlessness. In reality, courage often means something far more humble. It means being willing to face what is uncomfortable. It means acknowledging truths about yourself that you would rather avoid. It means admitting uncertainty when certainty would feel easier. It means allowing yourself to be seen as imperfect in a world that constantly pressures people to appear flawless. The journey toward wholeness requires this kind of honesty. When we begin to acknowledge our shadows, something surprising happens. We discover that many of the qualities we feared are not enemies at all. Fear can reveal what matters most to us. Vulnerability can deepen connection. Doubt can inspire growth and reflection. Even painful emotions often carry valuable information about our needs, boundaries, and values. This does not mean every impulse should be acted upon or every emotion should dictate our choices. Self-awareness is not the same as self-indulgence. Rather, it means developing a compassionate relationship with the full complexity of our nature. It means recognizing that maturity comes not from denying our darker qualities, but from understanding and integrating them. Consider a stained glass window. Its beauty emerges not from a single color but from the combination of many different shades. Light shines through both bright and dark pieces to create a complete image. Human beings are much the same. Our depth is often born from the coexistence of strength and vulnerability, joy and sorrow, certainty and mystery. The individuals who appear most grounded are rarely those who have eliminated their imperfections. More often, they are people who have stopped pretending they do not exist. They no longer waste energy maintaining impossible standards of perfection. Instead, they approach themselves with honesty, responsibility, and compassion. There is tremendous freedom in this shift. When you stop dividing yourself into worthy and unworthy parts, you begin to experience a deeper form of self-acceptance. You realize that growth does not require self-rejection. Transformation does not require self-hatred. Healing does not begin with becoming someone else. It begins with meeting yourself exactly as you are. Within that meeting lies a quiet kind of courage, the courage to stand in the presence of both your light and your shadow, and to recognize that together they form the complete landscape of your humanity. One of the greatest struggles in human life is the desire to be entirely good, entirely strong, entirely certain. From an early age, many people learn to divide themselves into acceptable and unacceptable parts. Certain emotions are welcomed, while others are hidden. Certain qualities are celebrated, while others are pushed into the shadows. We learn to present the parts of ourselves that seem worthy of love, and conceal the parts that feel flawed, vulnerable, or imperfect. At first, this may appear to be a practical strategy. After all, society often rewards confidence more than insecurity, certainty more than doubt, and success more than failure. Over time, however, this habit of self-division creates an inner conflict. The more we reject aspects of ourselves, the more energy we spend trying to maintain the illusion that they do not exist. Yet every human being contains opposites. There is kindness and anger, there is courage and fear, There is wisdom and confusion. There is generosity and selfishness. There is confidence and insecurity. These contradictions are not evidence of failure. They are evidence of being human. The problem begins when we believe that worthiness depends upon eliminating everything that appears imperfect. We become locked in a constant battle against ourselves. We criticize our weaknesses, suppress uncomfortable emotions, and judge ourselves for thoughts and feelings that naturally arise. Instead of understanding our inner world, we attempt to control it through force. But whatever is pushed into darkness rarely disappears. Unacknowledged fears often shape our decisions without our awareness. Hidden insecurities influence our relationships. Suppressed anger can emerge in unexpected ways. Ignored sadness can transform into numbness. The parts of ourselves we refuse to face do not vanish simply because we avoid them. They continue to exist beneath the surface, quietly influencing our lives. Imagine standing in a room with a large shadow behind you. The more you run from it, the more it follows. The faster you move, the faster it moves. No amount of escape changes its presence. The only way to understand the shadow is to turn and look at it directly. This is where real courage begins. Many people assume courage means fearlessness. In reality, courage often means something far more humble. It means being willing to face what is uncomfortable. It means acknowledging truths about yourself that you would rather avoid. It means admitting uncertainty when certainty would feel easier. It means allowing yourself to be seen as imperfect in a world that constantly pressures people to appear flawless. The journey toward wholeness requires this kind of honesty. When we begin to acknowledge our shadows, something surprising happens. We discover that many of the qualities we feared are not enemies at all. Fear can reveal what matters most to us. Vulnerability can deepen connection. Doubt can inspire growth and reflection. Even painful emotions often carry valuable information about our needs, boundaries, and values. This does not mean every impulse should be acted upon or every emotion should dictate our choices. Self-awareness is not the same as self-indulgence. Rather, it means developing a compassionate relationship with the full complexity of our nature. It means recognizing that maturity comes not from denying our darker qualities, but from understanding and integrating them. Consider a stained glass window. Its beauty emerges not from a single color, but from the combination of many different shades. Light shines through both bright and dark pieces to create a complete image. Human beings are much the same. Our depth is often born from the coexistence of strength and vulnerability, joy and sorrow, certainty and mystery. The individuals who appear most grounded are rarely those who have eliminated their imperfections. More often, they are people who have stopped pretending they do not exist. They no longer waste energy maintaining impossible standards of perfection. Instead, they approach themselves with honesty, responsibility, and compassion. There is tremendous freedom in this shift. When you stop dividing yourself into worthy and unworthy parts, you begin to experience a deeper form of self-acceptance. You realize that growth does not require self-rejection. Transformation does not require self-hatred. Healing does not begin with becoming someone else. It begins with meeting yourself exactly as you are. Within that meeting lies a quiet kind of courage, the courage to stand in the presence of both your light and your shadow, and to recognize that together they form the complete landscape of you. Humanity. There comes a moment in many lives when a person realizes that the search they have been pursuing for years is not leading outward but inward. For a long time, they may have believed that fulfillment existed somewhere ahead of them, waiting to be discovered through the right achievement, the right relationship, the right opportunity, or the right version of themselves. They keep moving forward, convinced that peace is a destination they have not yet reached. Yet, gradually, through experience, they begin to sense something unexpected. The answers they seek do not feel new. They feel strangely familiar. This is one of the great paradoxes of personal growth. The deeper we travel into ourselves, the more it feels like remembering rather than discovering. Many people imagine identity as something that must be built from scratch. They spend years collecting labels, accomplishments, beliefs, and roles in an attempt to define who they are. They introduce themselves through professions, responsibilities, affiliations, and achievements. While these things certainly shape a life, they do not fully explain the person living beneath them. There is always something deeper than the roles we perform and the stories we tell. In childhood, before the world has fully instructed us on who we should become, there is often a natural authenticity. A child expresses curiosity without worrying whether it is practical. They imagine freely, feel deeply, and move through life with a sense of immediacy. Over time, however, expectations begin to accumulate. Families, cultures, institutions, and social environments all contribute their own ideas about success, worth, and identity. None of these influences are inherently wrong, but together they can create layers that gradually obscure our original nature. As years pass, many people become so accustomed to these layers that they mistake them for their true selves. They pursue goals because they are expected to. They adopt beliefs because they are familiar. They follow paths because they appear respectable or safe. Yet beneath the surface, a quiet voice often remains. It may appear through intuition, longing, creativity, or unexplained dissatisfaction. It is the part of us that remembers something we have forgotten. This remembering rarely happens all at once. Instead, it often unfolds through experiences that interrupt the momentum of ordinary life. A loss may force someone to reconsider what truly matters. A failure may reveal that their self-worth was built upon fragile foundations. A period of solitude may expose how much of their identity depended upon external validation. What initially appears to be a disruption can become an invitation to deeper self-discovery. The process is not always comfortable. Remembering who you are often requires questioning who you have become. It asks you to examine beliefs that have guided your decisions for years. It challenges assumptions about success, happiness, and belonging. It requires honesty about the ways you may have abandoned parts of yourself in order to gain approval or security. Yet within this challenge lies a profound freedom. Imagine an old piece of artwork hidden beneath layers of dust. The image was never destroyed. It was simply covered. The task is not to create a new masterpiece, but to carefully remove what obscures it. In much the same way, personal growth often involves uncovering qualities that have always existed within us: curiosity, creativity, compassion, courage, authenticity, and wisdom. These qualities do not need to be manufactured. They need to be remembered. The journey inward reveals that the self is not a fixed object, but a living reality that continues to unfold throughout life. There is always more depth to explore, more truth to uncover, more understanding to cultivate. Yet the deeper this exploration becomes, the less it feels like becoming someone different. Instead, it feels like returning to something essential. Many of the things we spend years searching for: peace, meaning, belonging, and self-worth are not rewards waiting at the end of a perfect life. They are qualities that emerge when we reconnect with our authentic nature. They arise when we stop measuring ourselves solely through external standards and begin listening to the wisdom that already exists within us. The remarkable discovery is that the person you have been seeking may have been present all along. Beneath the expectations, beneath the fears, beneath the endless striving, there remains a self that has quietly endured every season of your life. And the closer you move toward that inner truth, the more familiar it feels, as though you are not arriving somewhere new but returning to a place you have always known.